You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo or honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker out there, you can try spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. Listen, I'm going to dare you to do it. I dare you. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs that you already love. Pick a flavor. Grab some extra napkins and then grab a few more napkins and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's.
What is up, Cal fans? We are back with a new segment called The Golden Tweets, a show title that Elon Musk himself would absolutely hate. But what this is we are going to have this essentially function as a mailbag or mail time. Or Rob,
You've got mail.
God, are you the person? Like, it's so good. Like, are you the actual person? Have you been the You've Got Mail person this entire time?
Yes, since I was a child in the 90s.
I mean, I gotta listen to that. I'm gonna run that back. That it is dead on. Regardless, what we're gonna do,
dude, there's gonna be so many people listening to this if you're younger that have no idea what that is.
It's true. Damn. All right. Well, there's a movie that you can go watch, and it's you'll understand. You'll get the reference. I can't say that you're going to enjoy the movie. I tried to watch that. Diana's a huge fan. Nah, not for me.
Yeah.
But what this is going to be is we're going to have a separate segment so that y'all can ask your questions, and we're going to leverage these questions to drive our content, and it'll all be us just riffing off of the questions that we're getting. If you're listening to this and you're like, how do I ask a question? That's a great question. You can go on and you can tweet at us on X or whatever the hell it's called now, and we'll read it there. We have an email that you can go and send us an email on Gmail, and then hopefully down the line, we'll have a technology where you can actually live read out your question, and we'll get you all on the pod. So we'll have your voice, your questions, your inflection, your tone, all here on the podcast, and really use that to drive this segment.
That is
so
cool.
That is the dream, as they say. But for tonight and today, we're going to rattle through some questions that we have received on the platform that used to feature a baby blue bird.
Andy, I'm gonna surprise you right now. Give you a little surprise. Since you mentioned email, my memory, someone did actually send us an email earlier this week. Surprising.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And this is regarding our preview podcast with Trace. All right. This is from, if I'm reading the name right on the email, is Nelson Rhyme or Reem, R-I-M-E. And the title of the email, subject, Rutgers 2001.
Oh, no.
Guys,
that was my comment.
Guys, I got to question your statement about the Cal-Rutgers game in 2001. I was at that thrilling season-saving game. Dubbed the Toilet Bowl by many in attendance, Rutgers came in 2-8, 0-7 in conference, and played to win, as did Cal. They played in the Big East then, a lot of current ACC teams, actually, which was a decent conference. 4 teams in the end of the season, top 21, same as the Pac-10, basically. But they lost to some bad teams, Connecticut and Temple. Moreover, in the games, Rutgers played before and after the original postponed Cal date. They were battered 110-0. And they weren't good, but unless they quit, I seriously doubt that I seriously doubt that. We earned that win fair and square. Keep up the good work. P.S. Cal Burners rule. P.S. 2. I'm looking to go to Pittsburgh and Wake Forest this year, plus the game if possible. Go Bears.
Go Bears. I'm assuming Cal Burner's like This person's on their way to Burning Man.
I know. I think he's saying he's there. He or she or they are a part of the Cal burner community.
Oh,
So like the anonymous Cal Twitter handles.
Oh, that's the deep internet.
Yeah, the deep internet. Yeah,
All right. Well, I like to pretend that they're just on their way to Burning Man,
that works
writing
too.
this email.
You
That
could
works
argue
too.
every Cal game is an attendance to Burning Man.
So I cannot refute, I cannot confirm nor deny anything that was just said. I think that as I think I said in the episode, I was talking to somebody and somebody was telling me this, that I had learned that this game had been postponed and that Rutgers originally was set to play us on 9/11, and obviously because of the events that had happened, and then they moved it to the end of the season, and it wasn't a meaningful game for anyone, and we won that game. But I mean, I don't have any of this context. I'm in 2001. I was in middle school, and while I was a Cal fan, I was not at that game.
yeah,
So I cannot speak to it. So as far as our source of truth, I trust the person who took the time to write a very thoughtful email and also knew all of those details, especially about a Rutgers team that sounds like they were pretty forgettable in the first place. Given that I can't remember things from like a week ago, it's pretty impressive to remember all of those details. And so we'll take it and we'll say that it was a well-earned win and that it was a hard-fought battle. And we appreciate you listening, and we certainly appreciate the clarification.
this is what it's all about. This is our community. This is what we're building. All right, we move on to the golden tweets. Got the first one from our dear friend Sid. Andy, Sid says, "My take on the UC Davis game is that we are saving everything for Auburn, or maybe I'm just saying that to make myself feel better. Regardless, go Bears."
Coping mechanism.
Activated.
Fun fact, I think I saw Sid on the streets of San Francisco, and I like looked back twice and was like, I swear I know that person. And then I was in a big group and was like, okay, I can't go back. But Sid, I'm pretty sure it was you on the Embarcadero or like on Market Street. We will talk about that. Moving on. It's definitely a coping mechanism. But I'm buying into it as well. So yeah, we were saving everything for Auburn. Of course, makes total sense. Didn't want to expose too much. I mean, let's hope so. But I also think that when you look at the actual game, and it's like fundamentally when we were talking last week, one of the questions that I asked you and Trace was, are we a team that's going to be more dependent upon the ground game than the passing attack? And I think both of you resoundingly said, that yes. And I also talked about the fact that like the identity of this team starts with the line.
Mm-hmm.
The culture of this team seems to start with the line.
Yeah.
So how would we rate our line performance? It's sort of like 50-50. And I don't know how much of like the concepts that did we deploy or not. At the end of the day, like what I'm really looking for is, can we bully an FCS opponent? And I think my answer was solidly, I'm not sure. Right? Like pass protection looked way better than what it's been. And if you gave Chase Garbers that amount of time, he would have been like, where the hell was this for my entire Cal career? Right. But, I think the flip side of that is I just didn't see Jaden hitting like wide open holes the way you might have expected against the UC Davis. Tim Plow is a great coach. He knows the program really well. I can't imagine how hard that is from a schematics perspective. And so it could be a false narrative a little bit in that sense too, where Davis looked way better against us because of the familiarity to the program. What do you think, Rob?
I mean, you're pretty spot on. Like, I mean, I pulled up the PFF scores from our game, and some of the interesting PFF stats from this Davis game is, first of all, PFF rates our defensive performance against Davis as the fifth best defensive performance in the country, in terms of like the grading that they gave. So we have a 90.6 defensive grade for the UC Davis game. Just to give some context, like highest rated was Marshall, and the teams around us are Missouri, USF, and UCF.
Well, let me ask you this, Rob. is that opponent like fielding independent pitching FIP in baseball? So is PFF looking at that the same way, like opponent independent data, or is it just like how do you get those grades?
I mean, I would think so because look, like Auburn, right, went 77 to was it the 3?
Yeah.
I don't see them in the top 50.
So yeah, okay.
So
It's just general grades,
mhm.
regardless of who they're playing.
Mhm.
And what do they use to make up those grades?
Well, it's like I think the defensive overall score is based on the run defense score, the tackling, pass rush, coverage. I think it's like an average of those, and that's what you get.
Okay, and last question. Is it a bunch of robots that are an AI that is just like looking at these
Generating
things
this?
and
It's actual
generating
people.
it? Or
It's
is
actual
it people that are watching every single football game?
It's people that are watching every single football game.
Commitment.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a job you can do. It's like a side gig you can do.
But me personally?
Yeah, if you want
to.
to.
I'm sure there wouldn't be any bias in that.
Not at all.
Hundreds
they probably wouldn't put you on Cal. They probably force you to watch some USC games.
I'll tell you what, they would have graded out pretty well.
But yeah, I mean, to my point, right? They graded as a 90 on defense. Offense was 68. But to help your point, out of the offense, what was graded the highest? Pass blocking. Pass blocking was rated at 79. So I think you saw the game perfectly. I think most people saw it as well. The pass blocking was and the pass pro was definitely improved. And that's probably, hopefully that's what they build on going into Auburn. But I think one thing we also didn't talk about in our previous pod going over, the Auburn game or the Davis game was just the improvement we saw in the special teams. Yeah. Both from kicking, kickoff, return, punt return, punt blocking, like just coverage on kickoffs as well. All of it, I think, had major improvements.
Yep. I agree.
Got to give credit where it's due.
I just think it's going to be like irony beyond irony if we end up having this like incredible O-line and we just get mediocre quarterback play and Jack Plummer's just somewhere just laughing. Like if he had that line 2 years ago, would have been unreal.
Yeah, well, he didn't have this offensive. He doesn't have this offensive line coach, so
he does not.
Let's see. Are you moving on to the next one?
Yep.
Moving on to the next one. All right. Tyler Tomei sends it in. Hot take. I think he means Isaiah Hunter. Hunter will be our Jaden Ott in 2025. What do you think?
Well, tough comparison because positionally.
yes. Disregarding that, I think if you're just
if you're saying like Heisman hopeful all conference player, that's pretty exciting. I would defer to you here, Rob. Like, do you see that true star potential where, and also it's a blessing and a curse. Does that mean that we're now constantly worried about poaching and, somebody leaving, as we've seen with some of our better players? But yeah, I would love to hear from you. Do you truly see that ceiling for him?
I see star power for him as well. It'll be a matter of how many touches he gets with the number of wide receivers we have. Like, there are a lot of mouths to feed. So, and then ultimately, like, the wide receiver position, like, is purely dependent on what in a modern football offense, right? It's not even about you being this like a separator or anything. Are you the first or second read that the quarterback has to make? If you are not the first or second read in a modern college football offense that you have to make, you're just not, you just won't have the target share amount to be able to put up those numbers. So that's why I think, like, Tron, as good as he is, like, is going to take that step back statistically, because if I think from the Auburn game, it was quite clear they kind of moved him to the inside, and he's not the first guy they're looking to anymore. Right. So I do feel like his targets will go down, which means his receptions will go down, his yards will go down. But overall, because of that, I think the offense is going to become more balanced.
Hmm.
Now, do I think Isaiah will be a number one, like a Megatron or a Jackson Smith, like a JSN type? Like, I don't know, or even like a Marvin Harrison, like number one for Ohio State, right? That I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna. I don't know if we're gonna build an offense purely built around a single wide receiver, because that's also contingent on quarterback play and the ability to get the ball to him. So we'll see where his development goes. Like, he has the speed, he has the separation, he definitely has the hands. It's just a matter of, can he do that against higher tier opponents and defensive backs? And we'll probably get our first test this upcoming week.
I mean, I hope Tyler's right. I hope both of you are right. That would be really exciting.
Yeah. To have another Heisman hopeful wide receiver back at Cal. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very
It's
much
been
so.
a while.
Next one is Rusty Shackleforth on Twitter. Says, do we see Rodgers getting snaps at Auburn? And I'm pretty sure he's talking about Chandler Rodgers, not Trevor Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Just making sure. Because there are multiple Rodgers on the team.
This guy loves love your Homer.
I do.
Homer there.
I do.
That's so good. Yeah, I do. For sure. I mean, if you saw anything from the Davis game, it's like Rodgers is clearly more of a threat with his legs than Mendoza is. It's not like Fernando is like a non-threat to run the football, but Rodgers is fast. He's got good decision making. I think people were like overly negative on him, from what I could tell. Like, I saw some folks being like, "Yeah, I never want to see him in a game again," and I was like, I didn't see anything that made me think he was a liability. And I think we've seen players that have come in and been a liability. So he's seen way more football and way more game situations. I think they'll run him out certainly in some packages. I also still think there's a possibility that they run it out. Like, they won't do quarter to quarter, I don't think, against Auburn. But I think that there's a world in which, let's say, Fernando is struggling the first 5 or 6 drives. I wouldn't be surprised to see them throw in Rodgers for a drive or two and see if he has more effectiveness. I think they'll ultimately go with whatever works. I think it's frustrating as a fan to continually have to go and be like, who's our starter? What's happening? What is the identity of this offense? It would be great if we could leverage camp more to have that a little bit more solidified, but it is what it is. And at least we have two really two good, like sturdy, steady options right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in the past we've been a little bit more about like not really knowing what we have in the backup, right? So like we have a little bit more of a known commodity here.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I would say too. Yeah, I think what Wilcox said about Chandler in the post game presser was right. Like, he was like, we just couldn't get enough sustained drives to like get him to be successful, and I think that was the thing. I need to go back and see some of his drives from the Davis game just to be like, look, okay, if we can't say it's all of his fault if we run on first down but get 0 yards, or we get blown up in the backfield and it goes back 2 yards, or like a penalty happens and you go back 5 yards, like, and then he's not able to convert on third down. Like, that's not his fault. And I think Wilcox did take a little bit of responsibility for that they didn't put him in some positions to be able to make those sustained drives because of the plays that we're calling. And
look, I mean, at the end of the day, too, it's like I think a lot of people come out and you watch first game and you make an informed opinion, and you're like, how was this even? When you go through a fall camp, you know that when it is tight and it is close, it's like it's legit. Like, it's not just this made up thing.
Yeah.
It's not a made up thing that coaches do for some sort of competitive advantage. If it's actually tight and it's like Rob saying it's tight, Trace is saying it's tight, Wilcox is saying it's tight, like it's actually a tight competition. And that's because the play, like there's unique characteristics to both. And I think that Rodgers flashed for me and I could see in the limited action that he had in this game where what these coaches like out of him as a player.
Yeah.
Like he brings, and I think there's like, whereas Sam, I keep going back to Sam Jackson, but like Sam last season just seemed to panic when he would pull it down. Roger seems to be very intentional about like, this is what I'm doing because this is the right move dictated by what the defense is giving me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that confidence and that certainty that I saw from him that I haven't seen from like a Brandon McElwain or like a Sam Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm forgetting the guy that came from like North Carolina State or whatever it was. But we've had these backups that have seen minutes that they've just been a little bit more jumpy. We could also, I forgot who you just mentioned before last season. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. All right, next one. One of our dear listeners, Gerardo. Gerardo writes, I really wish they would have put more trust in Mendoza as the incumbent and let him run with the ones throughout camp. He earned it over the other guys last year and deserves to have the reins.
What do you think, Rob?
I mean, I don't think that's like a hot take. I think it's just if you're looking at the narrative and just looking at like he was the incumbent and he led you to 3 wins to end the season and led you to a bowl game, like yeah, he deserves a start. Like the devil's advocate that we've been playing is just like if you're a coach, like you can't leave it to that. You just can't leave it to just the final 3 games. You have to try and improve the team every single time you're able to. So
it's all about what have you done for me lately. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I agree. Like I think there was something to me that said last season that this was earned. I know that earning everything is like Wilcox, that's his thing. But if he didn't come away from spring ball solidifying that position, then that's more on Fernando not stepping into that opportunity. Because I can almost guarantee it that coming out of last season, I don't think it was like, hey, spring ball, it's anybody's role. I think it was like, yo, you're the dude until proven otherwise. And and then you're going to have to compete and you're going to continue to have to earn it. That's just who Wilcox is as a coach. Like no position is necessarily given. It's all earned. And like past performance matters, but you see it a lot in college football where guys have a good few games set and then they fade back and somebody else comes in and takes their spot.
I mean, we saw it on the defensive side of our team too over the last few years. Like we saw Lou Magia become the starter his freshman year. We're like, holy crap! Like we're gonna have this dude for 4 years, and then doesn't really have that grit of a sophomore year. And then last season Noel comes in and takes the spot, and then this year like Marcus Harris comes in and takes the other spot, and he's left as the third cornerback that rotates in. So, like, is anyone really mad that overtaking happened? Probably not, because it improved the team. That's what it comes down to. Like it sucks if you root for this specific player,
yeah,
and you're a fan of this specific player, but like from an overall team perspective, like it's the right move because you're improving every position at any opportunity you get. Because the game of football and college football is ultimately it's about winning games.
That's exactly right.
So,
yep.
But yeah, Gerardo, I don't think that's a hot take. I think reasonably, if you were a people person, I think that's probably the way to go about it. It's just college football is so damn competitive. All right, we got the next one. Adams, our dear friend Adams. I saw him recently, a couple months ago, at a little home party, and brought his kid with him. Adorable kid.
Love it.
Yeah, it's great. he writes in. He writes in, and he's replying to the Tyler's take about Hunter being our J not in 2025. Adam says, I moved him to running back in college football 25, and he's lighting it up in year 3. See, so you can test it all out if you want. There's a video game for that now. Test it all out. I'm
I
like
love
in
that.
year 3 of a Cal Dynasty 2, and I see is like a 98 overall. So
I support any new parent that's able to get some video game time in. But yeah, that's amazing. Adams basically took my initial reaction, which is like, how do I see what this is like, and then brought it to life.
yeah, there it is.
So well done, as always.
Next one is from Bears in 4. He says, both sides of the ball look very vanilla. I think the Auburn game will be the true example of what we can expect this year.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think that speaks for itself. All right, 2 more. We got one from Big Daddy B. He says, treated this game as a preseason. With that said, what's the status of our D and O line? Need to be more physical on both sides.
I need some maulers, dude. Need some maulers.
I think we do have maulers. I think just like Bears in 4 said, the Auburn game and what we do in the Auburn game is going to be the true test. Are we going to run a lot more power? Do we think we can do that? Do we think we have somewhat of an athletically competitive offensive line and defensive line to be able to do a lot more things other than just base vanilla stuff? And hopefully we see that in the Auburn game.
I mean, if Jaden can't go, who are you thinking? Who's RB1? Because I would have thought Caldwell would be RB1, but I don't know.
Right, I would think from a talent standpoint, I think it has to be Cardwell, but I think they're bringing him along slowly because he just hasn't played football in 2 years.
Yeah, fair. Fair.
Like, I think he's great. He had a couple of runs where I think he would have busted long runs. I think he did also have like a 10-yard run in the fourth quarter, but he's also getting his legs back under him in game speed. I do feel like we might see him a lot more in the Auburn game, though. I do feel like the Davis game was the game where we were like, all right, you think you're good? Like, you think you're like okay to play? Then we can start using you and, just testing that out. But I think RB1 has to be Callaway if he's good to go. At least on a depth chart standpoint. Like if Jade Knott is actually a scratch, you put Callaway at 1. I think Jet becomes your number 2/3 down back, and then Cardwell is your switch at any for any guy. But yeah, talent wise, I think it's Cardwell, but I think they're just monitoring his snaps right now. Clear? Good? Okay. Or I guess defense. He said, what's the status of our D-line, O-line? Same thing. I think we'll start to see a little bit more stuff other than our base packages.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, I really want to look out to see like what does that look like game to game, right? From a defensive perspective, and are we the aggressive second half defense that we saw against Davis the whole game against Auburn, or are we like what you were saying, Rob, which is like bend don't break, and then understanding the moment to be more aggressive to try and like make that turnover and make a big play in the game.
Yeah, I am curious to see like particularly defensive line, right? Are we got 7 quarterback hurries from mostly base rushes straight up. So do we start to see a little bit more twists? Do we start to see some stunts?
Yeah.
Do we start to see some motion, to throw the offensive line off a little bit? And that's what I would be looking for, is if they think the staff think that we have the athletic ability to be able to do those types of things. Lastly, we got Who Dat on Twitter. For the golden tweets, why is it that no matter who the OC is, the offense seems to play timidly? What factors play into that?
Love it. My type of person right here.
Yeah.
And a Who Dat, which is New Orleans. Yeah. So well,
first of all, do you agree with the statement that we played timidly, or that we played timidly in our first game on offense?
Maybe, like, to a degree. in the sense that we like weren't really, as I said, it's like it would have been one thing if we were struggling with an identity that looked different from what we have been.
Uh-huh.
And I think that we've struggled to move beyond what we have historically looked like.
Uh-huh.
And when we've added as much speed at the wide receiver position as we've done, I would have hoped to maybe have seen a little bit more like tapping into that. Although I do feel like we did see Maven Anderson do some like more of the creative like plays and getting him the ball like in space. So it's basically just like needing to see more of that. I don't know. I don't know if it's timid or if it's turtling or any of the phrases that we have used over the years. Um, I would have preferred again, like I would have preferred a meaningless another additional fourth quarter touchdown. I think that like the the game probably isn't as close if we don't have a fumble return for a touchdown and like maybe like we're looking at like a 31-6 type of result and you're probably like taking that and being like that was pretty dominant performance, like you don't need more than 30. But we also had special teams contributing to that, so I just think we were a touchdown away from me being over like satisfied. I don't think I would call it timid. I don't think I would call it aggressive. I think I would just kind of call it like what some of our other listeners and have sort of said, right? Which is like, it's just sort of felt vanilla. It felt like they were holding something back. And I think that I'm not quite ready to call it timid, but I certainly share the frustration that anyone would have, especially as like a season ticket holder. You're going out there, you're excited. It's a new conference, first game this season. You're sort of expecting a cakewalk. I mean, for goodness sakes, like even Trey said that he was like really confident against Davis, right? So I just think like the historical Cal fans that know the struggle that is being a Cal fan, we're like, okay, we got this game. And the first half was like a 1-point game. And you're like, what the actual hell? And like once you have one half of that, it's really hard to get rid of that, even if you have a really good dominant second half, because you had one half where you're like, what is reality? I know certainly there was many people in my life that were texting like, is this worth my time to continue investing in? And I think my answer back was like, I'm not sure, right? Like I understand where that's coming from because time is limited these days. So I get it. I just don't necessarily know if I would say it was like timid, if it was by design. I think it's probably by design. And then they were like, okay, this is a really well coached team, so we better figure out how to actually like execute against this in the second half. And let's try to get some answers at our quarterback position along the way. Well, what about you, Rob? Because I know you see that a little bit, not necessarily differently, but just like different perspective.
I kind of really resonated with what Wilcox said in the presser. When they asked him about how he thought about his team played, he was like, there were really good moments, but ultimately it came down to the execution of the plays. And
he says that every time.
I know, but I'm thinking of just from this game, just this game's context.
His coach speak really resonated this time.
Yeah. Because I do feel like that was the case. I don't feel like they played timid. I felt like they tried to come out and run the ball down the middle. Like, that was kind of the first few plays. Like Jaden, the first play of the game for us, right, was an inside zone run for Jaden, and he gets 5 yards on the run. Like, I think that was setting the tone, is that we were going to dominate the line of scrimmage, which, to be fair, we kind of did. I think, not having your top 2 running backs for half the game, the second half of the game probably did that for you. But yeah, I think that my devil's advocate point probably to like the timid or the turtling stuff. Like if this was that, then we're not going for it on fourth down in the fourth quarter. We're punting even though we're on the 49-yard line. But we went for it. Like we're trying to convert and get and continue those drives, right?
Yeah.
It would have been just a moment of like, yeah, we're already up 3 scores. What's the need?
I also saw us do the tush push or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the things I was looking for was like, are we going to still be as aggressive as we were? I know that we have talked about that being a head coaching decision, not the offensive coordinator like decision around the aggressiveness to go for it on fourth down.
Uh-huh.
And it was rewarding and fulfilling yet, even though with all that being said, to see that happening where we were still being aggressive in those positions, and really, I think that's been a growing an area that Wilcox has really grown into as college football has evolved. I think we've seen him step into that because he wasn't always that way.
I don't think I think his decision making, the word that I would use wasn't as ruthless as we would have wanted him to be. But I feel, for me, after watching that Davis game, I'm like, yeah, I think he's changed. I think he is willing to do it. I think he was always a little, because remember that presser from last year, right, where he was talking about the opposing team, if they go for it on fourth down, like, we need to be able to punish them for making that decision to go for it on fourth down. And my read into that, for me personally, probably translates to how he coaches, in that he doesn't want to make those unnecessary risks that he doesn't need to. He'd rather execute on first, second, and third down than needing to go for it on fourth down to convert, right? But I feel like that's kind of his mentality has changed, where he's like, maybe I do need to absorb some of that a little bit, where we do need to do that so that we can gain the advantage in moments that we need to.
Like going for 2 on an extra point after your first touchdown.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we saw that. And I think that's missed because of the overarching narrative of how the Davis game went, particularly the first half. And everyone is just so hyper-focused on how bad we looked in the first half that looks like what the team looked like the entire game, when in reality, it doesn't really feel that way.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the last question.
And those were your golden tweets. If you like this episode, give us feedback. If you didn't like this episode, give us feedback, because we'll probably just read it on the air next week.
Yeah, so you can get in with us on Twitter at Golden Bearcast. You can also email us, as the guy did, about the Rutgers game, goldenbearcast@gmail.com. We'll read it on the air. We'll talk about it. And as Andy said, hopefully we'll have the technology soon for you guys to drop us voicemails. But that's it for this episode of the Golden Bearcast. And Andy, as always, go Bears.
Go Bears.